And now, the Lowe Post.
Welcome to the Lowe Post podcast. It's Tuesday morning. The NBA playoff races are heating up. There's little races within races within races, and we're going to talk about all the little jostling standings things with Steve Jones Jr., son of a legend, co-host of The Dunker Spot, regular on JJ Redick's podcast, the other JJ Redick podcast, now we have to call it. Steve Jones Jr., how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I feel good. I feel great. I'm happy. It's fun times. Playoffs are heating up, and I'm ready for it. It's a really competitive set of basketball games that are going to come up.
So we've reached the point of the season where there are like 10 mini races throughout the standings, ranging from the glamorous, who's going to get the number one seed in the Western Conference, to the ignominious, are the Raptors going to finish with the sixth worst record in the NBA and up their chances of keeping the pick? They San Antonio. They have Toronto, congratulations, have lost 11 games in a row and have risen, quote, into the number 6 spot. The Memphis Grizzlies, who have 42 injured players, have somehow passed the Raptors in the win column. So congratulations to the Raptors. Sets up a very intriguing last bunch of games for them and a potentially fun lottery for them. And we're going to focus on 3 subsets of races. All right, Steve, why don't you stick with me? We have one race. This is where we're kind of going to start. Kings, Mavs, Suns for the 6th spot in the Western Conference. And I don't see the Clippers continuing to backslide a little bit now in 5th, but we're just going to isolate those 3 teams for one non-play-in spot. That is a raucous race. Then we're going to move to the East, where we have kind of a one race for 3, 4, 5 between Cavs, Knicks, and the absolutely hellacious defense of the Orlando Magic. And then one spot below that, 6, 7, 8, kind of the equivalent of what's going on in the West, Pacers, Heat, Sixers. Are you ready to do some math, crunch some numbers, and look at these teams, Steve?
I am ready. Let's do it.
We're going to start in the West in that race that I just talked about, but I'm going to just swerve right away on you and say we can't talk about the West without at least starting with what is developing between the Warriors and the team that Draymond Green claims he does not care about, the Houston Rockets, who are now one measly half game behind the Warriors. One half game. Now the Warriors have the tiebreak. That's clinched, but they do play head-to-head once. One more time. So tiebreaker, schmiebreaker. If Houston wins that game, trouble on the horizon. Oblivion on the horizon. The unthinkable on the horizon. So here is my challenge to you, Steve Jones Jr. The Warriors, 4-7 in their last 11 games. And I've watched half of those games start to finish, maybe, and little tidbits of others. And Draymond's playing pretty well. Chris Paul's back doing some Chris Paul things. A little older. Can't get that elbow jumper off quite as easily. Got blocked the other night in a game. I don't even remember who the hell they were playing. They lost. Pajemski and Trace Jackson Davis looking pretty good for young guys. Kuminga remains on the rise. Clay's adapted to his role off the bench. Why can't this team get it together? Is it just as simple as Steph is in kind of a prolonged slump by Steph's standards? Like, it just seems like, and I've asked people within their team, I've asked people around the league, usually there's like, this team is bad at this, and that's why they're losing, or these two things. With the Warriors, it just seems like a different little bad 5-minute stretch every game linked to a different kind of weakness that springs up. But what have you noticed about them, and how much trouble are they in here?
I think the biggest thing is you mentioned the pieces that have played well and what they've found. And the question I would ask in return, how many of those things have happened at the same time? So you get Clay playing better post All-Star break, but now you have to deal with dips in other places. You have Kuminga, who's played better and been more aggressive and scored in different ways within their system, but has that impacted how defenses are guarding him or the team? You have the games where Draymond's looking great in pick and roll coverage, great help defense, but then he's in a drop or he's out of the game, and now they can't guard the three-point line, or now they can't keep the ball in front. I think it's just been a wave of trying to find the right lineups, the right combinations. And as soon as you find something, now you're trying to build to what do we run offensively? What do we run defensively? And it just has not come together. Like I look at it, there was a game they were playing Minnesota and they had a lineup out there. It was Chris Paul, Gary Payton II, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and Trace Jackson Davis. In theory, sounds great defensively. If I'm guarding them, how many people am I guarding? That's
2.5.
That's where it becomes, okay, how many lineups can you put out there? Not that aren't playing good Warriors basketball, not where you're not scoring, but are you able to go both ways? And I feel like that's been the struggle for the Warriors this season, to find the best consistent combinations in their context. And I think Chris Paul helps them in theory with their second unit, but if I'm defending them, I'm going to go with the drop, I'm going to go with the switch, I'm going to take your pick and rolls off the board. So now that's something you've taken from the second unit. Now those lineups don't necessarily have the same guys to perform movement-wise. That's taking a drop. Now you have to put Klay with them. Klay's playing well, but we're not guarding other people. And now we're not guarding the other end. I think it's just that kind of combination that's hurt them more than anything.
You know, the too many guys problem is a problem only when it becomes almost like a convenient excuse. But I do think it's a little bit like when you're injured, you never have enough guys. Like when you're shorthanded, guys are like, oh man, we wish we had all these guys healthy. And then they get healthy and like, well, it's too many guys. You can't have it both ways. But it does feel, to your point, they've been playing a lot of guys. And it doesn't feel like Steve Kerr has a good handle, not through any fault of his own, on like what his core lineup combinations should be. Who's going to close games? Some games they've played 4 guards and 1 big. Some games they don't play that at all. To your point, they have a few different lineups where it's essentially 2 guards who can really shoot and 3 not total non-shooters, because Draymond's actually shot the 3 pretty well this year. Kuminga's up and down, but like no one's guarding those guys or treating them as shooters. And then it's like, well, you know, Jackson Davis and Draymond, do we pair them ever? Somewhat, a little bit. It's just a lot of pieces, and just like hovering over all of it is Steph is shooting 39% in his last 15 games, and his paint game, he's shooting 34% from 3 in that stretch and 48% on 2. That's low across the board for him. And it's the simplest, dumbest explanation. They just can't afford not bad, but just subpar months for Steph Curry. They can't afford it. And the Rockets, man, are flying. Absolutely flying around. Şengün gets hurt. And I don't want to hear the better without Şengün talk, anything like that. Like they're going to miss shit. Like long term, they need Şengün. Şengün's really good, but they're deep and they're fast and they are just flying up and down the court without him, and have adapted on the fly, defending really well. Beat Portland last night, despite Jabari Smith Jr. also missing that game. I don't think the Rockets, like, this isn't a fluke. The Rockets are playing loosey-goosey, fun basketball, and circle that game. I can't remember the date. It's April something. That's going to be must watch if this keeps up, because the Warriors' defense is slumped. Their offense has been okay. Like, this is going to be interesting. How about those Rockets, huh?
The game is April 4th, but it's been
April
fun
4th.
to watch. It's been fun to watch Houston, Jalen Green making quick decisions, being better with reading the defense, being more decisive. They're playing with more tempo. I don't think it's related necessarily to Şengün, to your point. I think it's more them being willing to shoot earlier in the clock and not be as methodical, which I'm just glad they did naturally. Being able to use Thompson as a screener. I think Houston's on the rise. I will say the schedule does tighten up a little bit for them. So I want to see what they do over this next stretch before the Golden State game, where they have to play OKC and Utah and Dallas and Minnesota before they get Golden State. But Houston fought their way into this position, and we didn't think that would happen. So that's a salute to them.
Adaptable team. Jalen Green, to your point, leap might be too strong because weird stuff happens in March with teams that have nothing to lose. But he does feel like he's playing a little more under control, a little smarter, a little calmer. I've always been a Jalen Green backer. This has been heartening for me to watch, but I love watching that team. They play really hard. Okay, let's zero in on 6, 7, 8 in the West. Sacramento currently clinging to the 6th seed at 42-29, tied with the Mavericks, 42-29. The Mavs beat the Jazz last night. Those two teams play tonight. Warriors Heat also tonight, by the way, a huge game. The first of two games, a little baseball series this week between the Kings and the Mavericks, which, needless to say, will be massively impactful in this race for the 6th seed. The Suns are now 42-30 in 8th. Dropped a just disastrous game last night in San Antonio without Victor Wembanyama. They have the hardest schedule in the NBA remaining. It wasn't a must win, but here's how dire it is for them. Both Basketball Reference and PlayoffStatus.com give the Suns about a 9% chance of finishing in the top 6, aka 6th. 9% chance. Basketball Reference is exactly 9%. Playoff Status is something like that. The Suns need to go on a run, like a big run now, or they're looking at a play-in, which again is a disaster. What's missing with this team? Let's just start there. Like after that loss last night, I don't know if you saw that game, but they've had a couple problematic losses lately, including getting roasted by Milwaukee, which I talked about last week. Got well with some easy wins. Philly, Spurs looked like they were kind of righting the ship a little bit, and then last night happens. What's up with this team?
I think for me right now, it's identity. What is the identity of the Phoenix Suns outside of we have Kevin Durant, we have Devin Booker, we have Bradley Beal? Defensively, the effort is there, but is it consistent? Are they taking things away from teams? Is it an over-reliance on Kevin Durant? Are they able to keep the ball in front? Are you concerned about Nurk and pick and roll? He's done his job, but hasn't been as impactful. Offensively, do you have the same balance between movement and isolation and pick and roll? Is it having the impact? Because we've seen the ceiling of the kind of shots they can create, which gets you to believe in the Phoenix Suns. But overall, can you back it up on the other end? I think from night to night, what can you expect from Phoenix and what do they deliver? That's been my question during this stretch. But I'm also stuck with the fact that they can create these great shots, and KD's so good, and Devin Booker's so good, and when the ball is moving and they have off-ball movement, they can create havoc for a defense. It just hasn't felt like it's been as impactful as it should down the stretch.
Maybe it's just as simple as these guys haven't played enough together. I mean, it could be that, but, you know, to your point on the offense, there's no consistency to it. There will be 4-minute stretches where, okay, there's Booker and Beal running a split action and putting the weakest defender on the other team in a horrible position, or even better, Durant and Beal running a 2-man action that flows into something with Booker where the weakest defender on the other team, the smallest defender on the other team, might have to switch on to Kevin Durant. Sometimes I think they just need to use Grayson Allen more as a screener because he's often the guy who the opponents are hiding their weakest defenders on. And then there are stretches, I highlighted this last week in my column, where it's just like, it's one guy's kind of cooking a little bit and the other two are just standing in the corner, and it gets sticky and gummy, and they're talented enough for that to work and win some games that way. I don't think that's the path for this team to be the team that it needs to be. And you mentioned Nurkic. It's weird because he's had a good season. Like, Nurk has been good. And yet I watch them and I'm like, I feel like there's just a little too much use of Nurkic going on offensively. Defensively, he's been fine. Not a versatile defender. You like to talk about schematic versatility. He does not really bring that. It's kind of either drop. Sometimes they'll bring him up to the level and he's kind of scattershot at that, or hide him somewhere on, like, if there's a non-shooter we can hide him on that's not their screen setter, maybe we do that. Offensively, they use him as their hub, and he's been kind of good at that. And yet I feel like he's almost too involved, and he's involved because if he's not the hub, he's just kind of clogging up the paint. And so they have to use him as the screen setter and the DHO guy. But by doing that, they're deflating the number of possessions where their best players are actually cooperating. I don't know what the answer to that is. I also don't know what you think of the whole Phoenix needs a point guard thing. So take either one of those and run with it.
I'm not the biggest fan of Phoenix needs a point guard because they have enough talent with KD, with Booker, with Beal, and their ability to handle the ball in those situations. I don't know if you need a traditional point guard to set things up for them, because I think it would be, to your Nurkic point, the reverse, to where the ball would be in player X's hands, and now we're setting things up. But am I defending that person when they're spaced? Like, conceptually, I'm still going to guard them how I want to guard them. I think when it comes to Nurk, it's interesting. You mentioned the point about them not wanting to space him. It gets tough because sometimes when they default to pick and roll, it also defaults to Nurk catching on the short roll. And while he's made good decisions, he also has struggled finishing, which has been a traditional thing for him. And then you have the mixture, I think, of those possessions where they use them in the post. And now it's a post split between Bradley Beal and Devin Booker or Kevin Durant. And you get an advantage off that because now Nurk can get a screen, but then can they keep the advantage once they get two on the ball or the ball sprays? Who's that fifth guy who's going to make another drive? You know, I think Grayson Allen's made a bunch of shots. Eric Gordon was supposed to be that guy to a degree. It's been up and down.
I'm glad you bring him up because he's in my notes as like, it was a big deal that they got him for the minimum. And for the minimum, he's been fine. He has not been like the supercharged, consistent bench shooting force that I think. And he's also getting old. Like, he's just older than people think. There are games where it's like, where you don't really notice his impact. And like Royce O'Neal has felt more impactful in the last 10 games than Eric Gordon. And I'm not even sure it's been close.
No, I agree with that. I thought Royce gave him a good boost, but I want to see the balance. And I think your point about them having maybe not played as much is a very fair one. I think a lot of times with these teams who make these trades, year two ends up being the year where things start to come together. And I just wonder if this is just them going through their journey. Because, see, I get frustrated when I talk about Phoenix because in my mind, I'm thinking about a play against the Spurs where Nurk caught in the post, KD's on the block. They end up setting like a diagonal screen for him. He gets a wide open shot, and they just stop going. Like, they go away from all of that. And I'm like, why did you do that?
There was also a play where last night, Grayson Allen, who had, I think, Trey Jones on him. So, no shot Trey Jones against Kevin Durant. Might as well be me against Kevin Durant. Grayson Allen sets a cross screen for KD in the lane. They don't switch because they don't want to switch, so they chase. The screen hits. Grayson Allen's like a nasty little screener. And KD just gets a wide open 12-footer. It's like, can we just get more of that and like less of KD or Beal or Booker, whoever it is, doing nothing in the corner? They just don't play enough. Sometimes they do, but not enough in like a connected way. They don't look like a connected team. And I do think that bleeds over into their defense, which has been disconnected for large parts of the season. And obviously they're challenged in terms of size, rebounding, personnel, all of that defensively. This team is not built to be a great defensive team. The year two thing, I get it. And like Beal's injuries really hurt them this year. Kevin Durant's almost 36 years old. You traded everything for this team, everything. I don't want to hear about year two. Like, I don't want to, like, if they miss the playoffs this year, this is like a catastrophe. And the point guard thing is interesting because I've been all year like you. I don't think they need a point guard. I don't want the ball out of those guys' hands. This is a semantics thing, but the more I watch them, and I remember when they traded Chris Paul for Bradley Beal, which is a trade I liked. Chris Paul's getting older by the day, and like, yeah, Beal's missed half the season. As a pure talent and age play with almost no other avenues to really upgrade your roster, that's a trade you do for Phoenix, I think 10 times out of 10. But at the time, I said, there's one thing that worries me a little bit. It's less the position of point guard and more, do they have anyone better than like a B passer on this team? Chris Paul was an A passer. Now he can't really, I don't know that Chris Paul can start on an elite team anymore. So they were right to move on. But I watched this team and I'm like, I'm not craving like they need to get Tyus Jones in here and get a game manager. But I remember, I think it was Ramona Shelburne kicked around the idea of are the Suns interested in Harden? Now they had nothing to trade for Harden. That popped back into my head last night as I'm watching them. Cause like, I don't point guard, whatever. It would just be helpful if one of these guys were like an A passer. And I don't think any of them are. As much as Book is advanced and is a 6, 7, sometimes 8 assists a game guy, he's a scorer at heart. And I think sometimes late in games, he just kind of takes the offense, and that's cool. I love Devin Booker. He's an all NBA player, but that's just not the best way to use Kevin Durant, for instance.
No, I believe it. I think that Booker is probably the person you need to be able to make those plays. You also need him to score. Now, I have a question for you. Are you completely out on the Suns in a playoff setting, in a playoff context?
Look, I'm not a completely out guy when you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker on your team. I said this last week. Here's where I am. It just feels like it's not happening this year for the Suns. The more I watch them, the more I'm like, it just doesn't. They're kind of running out of time to figure it out. So, look, if they have to go through the play-in, and I read you the odds, they got to get in the playoffs first. I think they could win a series just on just they have these guys on their team and they're awesome. I have a hard time unless matchups really break right for them and health really breaks right for them and maybe wrong for their opponents. I just don't see enough consistency for me to think, okay, yeah, this team can really pull it together and make the conference finals. That's where I am. What about you? Answer your own question.
I think that I'm in the same boat. I think they could definitely make it really hard if they make the playoffs for whoever they are and have in the first round. I just don't know. Like if they end up with the 6th seed somehow and they end up playing Minnesota, for example, that wouldn't be the most fun for Minnesota. But then where do they go from there? I just don't know. Do you have enough defense? Do you have enough movement? I want to believe in a playoff context, your defense might go up a level. You still have KD and Booker. But if we can game plan for one or two of those and the jump shots aren't falling, can we live with what you give us over the course of a series? That's where I'm like, I wish the base was a little bit stronger so I could believe in a run.
I also just wonder how they would respond to, all right, we're down 2-0. Do we feel connected and confident, and do we have the self-belief to kind of grasp the rope and pull ourselves back up? Or is it going to go the other way? And by the way, I've said before, and they may damn well prove me wrong. I don't think Minnesota can win more than one round without a healthy Karl Anthony Towns or a healthy-ish Karl Anthony Towns. I just think he's too important to their spacing and their offense. I love the way they're playing right now. They are playing so hard, so connected, and so together. They are absolutely stone cold number one on defense, and they have sustained that they have sustained it the entire season. And Edwards, for all the dunks, and I talked about the dunks last week, he's getting more and more baskets like off cuts and give and goes and more passing reads where it's like, oh, he made the right pass at the right time. Like it's not all coming together because it doesn't all come together for a guy who's 22 years old, but more of the little things are coming together for him. Like I love the way they're playing right now. Okay. So enough Phoenix, who is in a whole lot of trouble right now, unless you have any other Phoenix thoughts.
Nope. I'm sunned out.
Mavs Kings tied in terms of record. Kings have the head-to-head 2-0 right now with 2 games left, and after that it will come down to conference record if the Mavs manage to even up the season series. Mavs have more road games left. The Kings have more home games left. Edge Kings. Mavs have a much easier opponent slate. Edge Mavs. Kings have kind of made do without Kevin Huerter, and I think people have forgotten about Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles is a big loss injury-wise for the Kings. They need him back. They're scraping by with Keon Ellis making shots and hounding everyone on defense. They're 9-4 in their last 13 games with some good wins. It hasn't all been angel food cake for them. It's been Lakers twice in games the Lakers really needed to win. They beat the Bucks. They killed the Bucks. They beat the Wolves in overtime. Their defense has really tightened up in that span. I'm not sure how real that is, but it's certainly interesting with Keon Ellis. And the Mavs, look, man, we know they got those 2 dudes, and every time I watch them play, I see a little bit more of like the Luka Kyrie 2-man game, like a little bit more sophistication to it. The integration of PJ Washington, and do we want to play him and Kleba at the 4 and the 5? Do we ever want to play them at the 3 and the 4? We got to make that decision, but Gafford's been great. Which of the and by the way, odds right now, they're pretty even in terms of who's 6th and who's 7th according to the projection system. So this is going to be a fun battle down the stretch. Which of these teams is a more dangerous playoff team to you? Let's start there.
More dangerous playoff team, I would still go with the Dallas Mavericks there. No offense to the Kings, but when you have someone like Luka Doncic who has proven he can hit every one of your schemes, if you want to switch, if you want to play drop, you want to put two on the ball, he's going to cause problems with that. Kyrie is playing at a better level, and they're able to integrate them either together or in waves and be more comfortable. I think that's important. I think having a 5-man consistently between Gafford and Lively was something I liked when they made the trade. I didn't think that would just be Gafford as the starter, and then you go 8-1 with Gafford as the starter, but that's just kind of how Dallas ends up rolling into things. But I like that element of having a roller all the time. You can occasionally go small. I guess for me, that's a lot to deal with in a playoff series. And when you add, the Derrick Jones Jr.'s, the PJ Washingtons who have a size and length, you just need to hit the certain notes if you're Dallas. We just need to be able to make enough of these shots. We need to be able to guard enough of these guys, have enough of these possessions. I think they look stronger in a playoff series and can hit higher notes. I would probably lean Dallas there. But Sacramento's had me in a headlock all year.
Well, we're going to get to, I want to get into that headlock. I want you to extricate yourself from that headlock like Hulk Hogan hulking up in 1989 and, hit the guy in the stomach and then wag your finger at him. I love the way Luka and Kyrie are playing together. Not necessarily, it's not like they're running 20 pick and rolls together or something like that, like Kyrie and LeBron back in the day, but they're doing it a little bit more and they're just playing off of each other really, really well. Give and goes. So I'm going to come to get the ball from you and then I'm going to fade to the corner for a 3. Luka has really adapted to Kyrie's pace. I think that's been a huge story for the Mavericks this year is that they've played pretty fast this year, which is people did not think Luka was going to be able to do that or willing to do that. And he has been. I just think, as long as that dude's healthy, nobody should want any part of them in the playoffs. Let me ask you this. Let's say Josh Green comes back. I don't know what his timetable is, that he's been out for a bit. Exum's back now. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been kind of in a slump for the last 6 weeks, up and down at least. What's your ideal closing 5 for the Mavericks? Who are the other 3?
Ooh. I like that question a lot. I would probably say, give me Tim Hardaway Jr., give me PJ Washington, give me Lively.
Okay, so a rim running center, PJ at the 4, and Hardaway is okay, we're gonna chip away at our defense a little bit for the sake of our spacing and our offense and our movement. I think that push and pull for Jason Kidd, what combinations, we've seen him close games with Kleba at the 5 and neither of Gafford or Lively. They have really not played Washington, Kleba, and one of the centers all together in big lineups. I guess they've determined those are too big, too bulky, too slow, whatever. That's an interesting thing to monitor for the Mavs, who, we'll see. These games starting tonight are huge. The Kings, they win tonight. They get a little control of their destiny. They clinch the tiebreaker and obviously gain a game. Why have the Kings had you in it? The Kings 9-4 in their last 13 games. What is the nature of this headlock? And how many times has the ref raised your hand to see if you can keep it up in the air or see if it drops to your side?
2 times.
Okay, so you're one away from being out. That's it.
I'm one away from being out.
Did anyone ever lose a match that way? Did that ever? Was there ever a match that ended with okay, he's just out. That's it. I guess whoever had the sleeper hold is a finishing move. I'm talking more traditional headlocks. Is they haven't quite got you in the sleeper or the $1 million dream. Just a traditional headlock.
I hope no one lost to just a traditional headlock. That you just need to go home at that point. I think the thing is their record's the same. Their defense has gotten better over the course of the year. Their offense took a hit, which you should have expected because they were so good last year. I'm trying to figure out how much of this has been working towards the playoffs, and is there going to be a payoff for that? Are they playing slower with the idea of we need to be able to do more things when it comes to the playoffs? Will the work they've done on defense, to where Sabonis has shown he can play at the level defensively, he's shown that he can play and drop at times. They've switched him a couple times, which has been interesting to try and have some of that scheme versatility.
So
Is
you've
that
liked
going to pay off?
you've liked Sabonis's defense a little more.
I've liked it more. Because I feel like he's been more consistent with his effort and his timing, and the rotations have been where they need to be for the most part. The only problem is they're so reliant on the rotations hitting, and they have to scramble that the nights when they don't have it, it just does not work. I, De'Aaron Fox has played well. Sometimes the shot selection looks a little off, but then he makes them, and you're like, okay, this is why you're taking these pull-ups, and this is why you're also mixing in the drives. Malik Monk has been really good. I just don't know. I don't know if that's going to be enough, because there's always that game where the defense plays off Sabonis. And while he's done an amazing job of looking to hit people in the face over and over and over again this year, how much of an impact does that have when we're playing off you? We're taking away the handoffs by being physical. And now where do you go? Have they solved that problem?
Yeah, they're a rock solid team. I just don't know that their point differential would suggest that their ceiling is not as high as these other teams. And that's okay. Like, I've been all year being like, take the Kings just taking a lateral step from last year, given the history of this franchise. It's totally fine. Don't go crazy trading 5 draft picks for this guy, because we got to get into the playoffs. We got to win around. I've been impressed with their fight late in the season, despite these injuries. And like, Lyles is not just another guy at the 4. Although my favorite Kings lineup might be Fox, Monk, Murray, Lyles, Sabonis. I like that group a lot. It hasn't played all that much together, but I like the way it looks. It's also, they lose Lyles at the 5 as a sort of change of pace, or we kind of just don't want to play Alex Len, maybe. But I've been impressed with their fight, and they know who they are. To your point about their pace, I think they would like to play faster. I think they at times this season, they have not been able to capture the same zip to their handoffs. And like, this guy's running around there at like 100 miles an hour. And then here comes Kevin Huerter at 100 miles an hour. Some of that zip has been missing, but they've fought like all hell, and they're right here looking at a top 6, 7 seed. I think I would pick Dallas ultimately to get the 6th seed, just based on their schedule. And then Kings, Suns would be 7, 8. And the loser of that would play the winner, obviously, of Lakers, whoever is 10th between Warriors and Rockets. That's the way I would have it shake out. But who the hell knows? The Kings have, every time go ahead. You got something on the brain.
Well, no, I was just saying, the identity point is what keeps me in the headlock, because of the way they play and how much they believe in that. And you brought up something that sparked my mind. How much do you buy into their potential with their 3-guard lineups because of Keon Ellis? And you can move Keegan Murray to the 4, and maybe you can play Fox, Monk, Ellis, Murray, and Sabonis.
They've done that here and there, and then they've like sprinkled some Chris Duarte in at the 3 lately. I think those lineups are too small. Not to sound like Charles Barkley, I just think they're too small. I would love to sound like Charles Barkley. I love Charles Barkley. Someday I'll tell the story of my encounter with Charles in Denver last year during the finals. It's delightful. But I think they're too small, realistically, and too easy for playoff offenses who are going to be good offenses. So they're probably going to have like an apex predator wing guy, like 6'8" wing dude, like Luka, and be like, all right, bring me that guy. Bring me that. No, that little guy's over here. Bring me that little guy. Yeah, I just think they're a little too small. Okay, are we ready to shift east?
Yes.
Since they play tonight, let's start with 6, 7, 8. The race for 6, because right now there's a 3-game gap between 5 and 6. This is a race between the Indiana Pacers, who are the favorites now for the number 6 spot, 41 and 32. The Heat, 39 and 32. The Sixers, 8th, 39 and 33. Obviously, they are wildly unhealthy, starting at the very top of their roster with Joel Embiid's continuing absence. Again, the Pacers are the favorites for 6th, which means 4, 5, 3 is a whole separate race between Cleveland, New York, Orlando. And I have heard a couple of people, not with these teams, just people spitballing around the league, when they're thinking about that race for 3 between Cleveland, New York, Orlando, with Orlando is the most likely among them to be the 5th seed at this point. We will get to Orlando, who's been just obliterating teams lately, bad teams mostly, but still. Ask me the question, Steve. If you're one of those teams, would you rather be the 3 seed, knowing we're likely to get Indiana, but we open up the risk of the playoff Miami Heat? We open up the risk of Joel Embiid if one of those teams catches Indiana, but likely Indiana, and then Milwaukee in the second round. Or 4-5, do we think Orlando is a potentially easier first-round opponent for us, but we are in Boston's side of the bracket? I don't know that these standings are going to be manipulatable enough, to use a word that doesn't exist, because these teams are just too close. I thought that was interesting. What are your thoughts on that just in general?
I think it's a really good question. The being in Boston's half of the bracket does make it a little interesting, but I would take the 4-5 to a degree, because I know who I'm playing. I'm getting a defensive-minded team to a degree. And then if we want to go where we want to go anyways, we're going to have to see Boston no matter what. So let's win the series, bring it. Let's see what we got.
All right. I don't disagree with you. Orlando's defense has been unbelievable. Orlando is up to 3rd in defense, within a couple of tenths of a point of 2nd. I'm just going to say this. I'm afraid to say it out loud because something bad will happen. With Jonathan Isaac on the floor, the Magic are plus 14 per 100 possessions. Plus 14, allowing an even 100 points per 100 possessions, which is 10 points below the league's #1 rated defense. And Jonathan Isaac had 20-something points the other night. He's up to like league average on threes. We're not supposed to be talking about the Magic. I think what's happening with Jonathan Isaac is under the radar. One of the most interesting and exciting basketball stories happening right now. But let's talk about Indiana, Miami, Philadelphia. Which of these teams would you like to start with?
Let's start with the Pacers.
The Pacers are 2nd in offense, 25th in defense, which sounds bad, but their defense is actually 12th in the last month or so. They're 7-4 in their last 11 games. They traded Buddy Hield. Benedict Mathurin is injured. But what that really means is they're giving more minutes to defensive-minded players, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nebhart, and the suddenly completely unstoppable one-on-one TJ McConnell. No one can stop this dude in isolation. It's absolutely ridiculous. Pascal Siakam is filling all the gaps on both ends of the floor for them. He's a matchup nightmare for a lot of 4s, small ball 4s in particular. He's too fast for 5s. He's filled all the gaps with Miles Turner spacing the floor. I've liked Jalen Smith's play in the last month at backup 5. I think there's a little mini leap happening there. I like the way this team is playing, despite the fact that Tyrese Halliburton just has not been the same guy since coming back from injury, trying to get that All-NBA eligibility. This is the safest bet on the board right now for the number 6 seed. The tiebreaker situation for them is they have won it against the Sixers already. They are tied 1-1 with the Heat, and a potentially massive winner-take-all tiebreaker game April 7th in Indiana between Miami and Indiana. There's something interesting happening with this team. They feel like a more complete and well-rounded team than they were a month ago. I don't know how real it is because anything is short sample at this point, but I like the way they've been playing recently. They beat the Clippers last night, destroyed the Clippers, beat the Warriors by double digits on the road in Golden State, games that those teams needed to win. I've liked the way they've looked.
I think with Indiana, it's been interesting to watch them navigate kind of some of these mini battles throughout the season. You mentioned the injuries, trying to bring Siakam in, trying to adjust to losing Buddy Hield. I think that also the Tyrese Halliburton stretch where he shot, 4 for 27 over a 4-game stretch was not fun. I've liked watching them try and figure things out in the half court. How do we use Pascal? When do we post him? When does he screen? When does he come off Turner? I've liked the fact that Turner has been able to make defenses pay. If you're going to put 2 on the ball, I can pop and make a shot. I can still roll and spray the ball out. I think it's just been interesting to watch them keep the same offensive mentality, but also have to change it a little bit. Not as many ghost screens, not as much pace at times, having to kind of get in the mud a little bit, but still playing with that high pace and tempo. I think that's important for a team like that to be able to go through that to get to their next step. So I think it's been fun to watch the Neesmiths, the Ben Shepherds of the world be able to contribute within what they do.
Ben Shepard's been solid for them. He's a solid player.
He's been good. So it's been fun to kind of watch them kind of navigate that before the playoffs. Because usually with these offensive-minded teams, you think, okay, playoff time, you're going to be in the mud now. How are you going to figure it out? Indiana's kind of been going through that for a mini stretch for like the last 8, 10, 12 games, it feels like. And I want to see how they come out at the end. Because that's a team that they play their style no matter who you are, for better or worse. And when you tie back to identity, do you want to buckle up and play Tyrese at a high level with them running with Pascal in the playoffs? I don't know. And
they are flying. And we talked about the Warriors earlier. One weakness I forgot to mention that reared its head in that game is the Warriors' transition defense has been bad all season. Too many guys just kind of loitering around doing nothing in no man's land. Clippers' transition defense has been a complete train wreck for like almost the entire season, and particularly in the last 6 weeks. If you're a train wreck transition defense, you're going to lose to the Pacers. They're going to run you out of the gym. They ran the Clippers out of the gym last night. How worried are you about the Clippers, by the way? Let's just do the Clippers thing for give me your 30. I did the Clippers last week. I'm flirting with like, I want to give you guys the benefit of the doubt because you're a veteran team that went like 26-5 and just took your foot off the gas. You are now 5th. Can you and you had Russ out. Okay. They've had, other guys have been in and out of the lineup. Tons of other guys, but James Harden's dealing with the shoulder thing. Like, can you maybe just get it together and give me a little bit of positive sign? Like, I'm starting to flirt with, am I picking the Pelicans in the first round over the Clippers? Like, I might. Like, I don't like what I'm seeing.
I gave them bail because one, we've seen the highs of this team together. So we've actually seen what they can do offensively, defensively. And also, you had this feeling they were trying to figure out what lineups to play, what combinations to play. So at the end of the day, I was like, did they just miss Russell Westbrook? I did not think I would be in that position. But I'm with you there a little bit because which bigs are you going to go with? Which lineups are you going to go with? Do you feel better about your small ball lineups with Russ back? It's been trying to fit, okay, can PJ give us something? Can Amir give us something? I'm more concerned with probably the type of losses where it just feels there's no juice, there's no energy.
Hey, Ty Lue used the S word last night.
I did see that.
SAWFT, soft.
That was probably where my eyebrow raised. But I think there's enough in there to where they can make a run. Now, you mentioned the Pelicans. The Clippers are only 2 games ahead of the Kings.
I know. So, we're getting a little dicey right now. Can you wake up? Like you keep it on cruise control. You might cruise all the way down to a place you don't want to be. Look, they still have Kawhi, who is an incredible playoff player. Period. Russ, they missed his rebounding. They're a bad rebounding team, and they're a small team, and they missed his energy and his pace. A lot of it was also about without Russ, the guys we're giving minutes to are just guys that are like Bones Highland was a 0. PJ Tucker has been okay, but he's not really doing anything for you on offense. So it's been more about the guys that have been playing. I want to go back to Indiana, Philadelphia, and Miami now. Any other thoughts on the Pacers?
No. I am wondering where you're at with the Heat, honestly.
Okay, so let's just review. Basketball Reference has the Pacers 46% chance to get the 6th seed, and then 13% chance at 5, and not very unlikely, but they have a big edge for 6th. For 7th, Miami is, because of their schedule, they have a very easy schedule. They have the Raptors twice to end the season, or have the edge over Philly for 7th and home court in the play-in game, if that's what it comes to. The Heat, I mentioned they have the head-to-head left with the Pacers. They lead the Sixers 2-1 head-to-head. They have a game left, and they have the better conference record, so they're probably going to win that tiebreaker no matter what. I don't know where the hell I am with the Heat, man. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with the Heat. They're 22nd in offense. They're below. You mentioned the Magic. as a defensive first team, implying that the Magic, we know, have a pretty low floor on offense. The Heat are one spot below the Magic on offense. They're ninth on defense. Jimmy Butler and Bam together +5 per 100 possessions, like not awesome, just good. Jimmy Butler, Bam, and Tyler Hero have only played in 21 games together. Tyler Hero is hurt. Duncan Robinson's hurt. Kevin Love's hurt. This team just, it hasn't been able to capture any rhythm, and yet I will always be scared of them. Like they're scared. They will always scare me, but it's like Jimmy Butler, the Pelicans just blow them out the other night. And Jimmy Butler's like, we'll beat them next time. We're just a better team than they are. It's like, it's cool. You can keep talking this talk and you've earned the right to talk this talk. If you're in the play-in every year, one of these years, you're not going to get out of the play-in. Like you might want to get out of the play-in, but right now they got an uphill battle. I don't know what to make of this team, except they're always going to defend pretty well and they scare me and they're injured. And I don't know what their offensive ceiling. I mean, that was what they did last year to make the finals. They got to another level on offense because they just couldn't miss from three. Can they do that again? I have no goddamn idea. Can you tell me?
I think the potential is still there for Miami to make that run offensively. It's just going to be what kind of shots are they going to generate and how much of the ball movement is going to be there. And, for me, it always comes down to, is Jimmy going to make the pull up? That helps. Bam Adebayo taking threes helps. I think his growth offensively has been fun. The intriguing part for me with Miami is always that for some reason, whenever they get to a point where a defense wants to put two on the ball or double someone, they don't make the defense pay. Like Bam gets doubles in the post, and I'm like, well, this should be good. And then I'm like, wait, why did everyone recover? Why is no one doing anything? I just think it's, can you get Martin going? Can you get Terry Rozier going? You get playoff Jimmy. You got Bam playing better. There's always potential. But I think to your point, at some point they have to win enough games to be in a stronger position. Like if they were in the 4 or 5 seed conversation, probably feel differently about Miami. But I'm also not betting against Miami.
I mean, they're not going to get to 4 or 5,
No.
almost certainly. A month ago, before this wave of injuries hit, I thought the interesting discussion would be like, who should start for Miami? Like, if you think that Butler and Bam are givens, and they are, obviously, I think there was an interesting conversation to be had about all 3 other spots between, should one of Rozier and Hero now come off the bench? Has Duncan Robinson earned his keep as a full-time starter because of his shooting and his movement and his improved 2-point game? Are we really going to bring both Jaquez and Caleb Martin off the bench, even though they're sort of similar jack of all trades kind of players? Jaquez more of an interior scorer, Martin more of an outside in guy. I thought that was an interesting conversation. And now it's more like they just need to get their team back together. Like they just need more of these guys. There's too much Jovic, although he's been okay. There's too much Haywood Highsmith. They really miss Kevin Love. I know that sounds crazy. Like he's been pretty good for them. And the other options there are not great. I just don't know what to make of this team other than if they have to go through the play-in, they'll probably gut their way through because, worst case is you lose to Philly in the first one and then you just have to beat Chicago or Atlanta to get the 8th seed. And then Boston's like, what? Again? Like this team again? I don't want to face this team. Like nobody wants to face them. But if I'm them, we're going to talk about 3, 4, 5 in the East. Like I think there's a big gap between 6 and 7 in terms of like, I either get Cleveland who, apologies to them, are unproven and also dealing with some injury issues. New York, who Tim Bontemps reported last night that Tibbs before the game said Mitchell Robinson is going to come back soon and before OG Anunoby and Julius Randle. So it's like, okay, what Knicks team are we going to get? Is Josh Hart going to never come out of a game again for the rest of the season? Him and Deuce McBride, just old school, going old school. And Orlando, who's Orlando, like, and then my alternative, even if I win the play-in, I'm getting Milwaukee. And if I win the second game of the play-in after losing the first one, I'm getting Boston. It's a pretty big delta right there.
Yes. If you're Miami, do you want Milwaukee?
I want the 6th seed. That's my point. I don't want either. I think So Milwaukee, they play the Lakers tonight. LeBron, I think, was listed as doubtful or something, so not as exciting a game as we thought. Milwaukee's game against Oklahoma City, what was that, Sunday? Um, that was we'll see what the ramifications of it are, but obviously we've all been waiting for Chris Middleton to make that team whole. He comes back, Giannis misses a couple games, we gotta wait further. Well, they were whole in that game. It was the best game they've played all year. Their defense was at a total other level of connectivity, intensity, making reads on the fly. Like, you drive towards Brook's going to sag off. I'm going to take the driver. You rotate out to my guy. Like, I hadn't seen them play with that level of like mind meld connectivity all season. And we knew this was going to be the case, but like Middleton coming back, it's not just him, and he's got that instant chemistry with Giannis. Like, Dame, Brooke Lopez, pick and roll, swing it. Chris Middleton, Giannis, two-man game on the other side. Like, that's going to hit every time. It's all of a sudden Jay Crowder's like, oh, that's a useful off-the-bench guy instead of like spot starter guy. Bobby Portis is apparently determined to just post up everybody and put just rain fire over the world. That was a game I'm putting a pin in, because you're asking me, do I want Milwaukee? Right, with that game fresh in my mind, I want the 6th seed. I don't want Milwaukee.
There we go.
Philly, I just have nothing to say about other than like, I mean, we'll see, right? Like, we'll see if the big fella comes back. Can they get Melton ever healthy? Covington, Batum's in and out of the lineup. Lowry's, they're just like, it's a lot of campaign happening. Like, I just don't know what to say. Do you have anything to say? I don't know what to say.
It's been fun to watch defenses lock in on Tyrese Maxey and then watch Tyrese Maxey kind of counter whenever he actually finds like a sliver of space. So when they aren't trapping him or they aren't putting two on the ball and he actually has space in transition or in the half court, he just zooms in the paint. That's been my most fun thing to watch. The tough part for Philly is because you're injured and banged up, you're in a scenario where you have to use movement. But, you know, if Tobias or Kelly Oubre is not having a good night and you're stagnant, you bog down, defense is at a bad level, your path to victory is just slim. They're fighting, though. I mean, Kyle Lowry is trying to make as many plays as he can for him.
Paul Reed shooting jump shots. Tobias Harris woke up in the last week, which was nice to see and much needed for them. Buddy Hield, I liked that trade for them. Just hasn't really hasn't really impacted their team hardly at all. It feels like.
It feels like he would be so much better with Joel Embiid in there. I just feel like defense is adjusted to Buddy Hield space, to Buddy Hield screening for Maxey. And then they got Kyle Lowry, and it's like, we need to defend. Let's play Kyle Lowry.
Wait, did you have any other Heat thoughts? I kind of hijacked the Heat conversation. You have any other Heat thoughts?
No, we're good.
I don't know. Those guys, when I see Spo glaring on the sideline, if I'm any other team in the East, I'm like, oh God, I don't like that look on his face. Okay, let's talk Cavs 44-28, Knicks 43-28, Magic 42-29. Where would you like to start with this group?
Let's go Cavs.
Okay, the Cavs 17th in offense, 4th in defense. Evan Mobley is back. Donovan Mitchell is not back. Max Strus is not back. Dean Wade is not back. Darius Garland's starting to look a little more like jitterbuggy last couple games. They have an easy remaining schedule. They have lost the tiebreaker for the Knicks and are 2-2 with the Magic. But a little plot twist, the Magic would win that tiebreaker based on winning the Southeast Division, which is still a thing that exists for some reason. And let's see, the Cavs are 9-12 in their last 21 games. That run where they won 17 of 18 against a mostly easy schedule, some good wins in there, though, to their credit, feels like a long way away. Is that due more to injuries and just not getting the same rhythm you had because guys are in and out of the lineup, or has something happened to this team?
I think it's injuries. I think the biggest thing for the Cavs is health and the matchup they get. If they can get Donovan Mitchell back, they can get Max Strus back, I think they can refine that rhythm. I mean, you think about it, they're the 3 seed. That starting lineup of Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, and Allen has played, 22 games? And they're 15-7? And it's like, well, Can we get more of that? Because they've improved on what they struggled with in the playoff run. The movement's been better, the flow's been better. I really like Jared Allen and Evan Mobley and the moments of aggression they've shown, especially their big interior passing. Like I feel like that's been a fun thing for Cleveland this year. I think having Strus really helped their flow offensively because you could use him in so many different ways, movement wise. I think they've had guys step up, but I would like to see them be whole. I mean, because you've had positive minutes from Isaac Okoro. The threes jumped up, but he's also driving, making quicker decisions. Karis LeVert is able to be more like Karis LeVert and make those type of plays without an extra burden. Being able to play Allen and Mobley at the 5 has been a positive. I just want to see what they're fully formed, like what that progress looks like in the playoffs. I think my thought is, what happens if you did all this work and you end up in the same type of matchup you ran last year, where you either end up playing the Knicks or you play the Magic, whose defense is just as, if not tougher than the Knicks defense was last year.
Now, the jigsaw puzzle for them to end up playing the Knicks in the first round is a pretty hard jigsaw puzzle to mesh together. If they play the Magic, they have to win. Just based on if they're healthy, they have to win. They play the Pacers, they have to win. A first round loss to either of those teams will be qualified, justifiably so, as a huge disappointment. Now, if they play the Heat or the Sixers with Joel Embiid, which are, again, unlikely scenarios, but at least the Sixers won, given their place in the standings, that's a different story. To your point on the main, I liked, they are plus 3.5 for the season with Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen together. Only 305 minutes. Not a great net rating. Offense, not so good. When they were rolling, I've said this before, they had like 3 different teams. They had that team. They had the Mitchell, Allen, and Mobley and Garland on the bench team. Then they had the reverse, Garland, Mobley, Mitchell, and Allen on the bench team. Both of those hybrid teams are massively positive, like plus double digits per 100 possessions. And yes, ideally long-term, you would like your 4 best players functioning together to be your best lineup. This team needs to win a playoff series. Long-term can go over here, park it for the side. What's best for now? And what's best for now has been staggering the minutes like that. And they looked really good. And I'm glad you mentioned the big guys in the passing. Jared Allen, with Mobley out for a while, now with Mobley back, offensively, that dude, it might have been an accident, but in the last couple of games, he's had the ball, not at the elbow, but like almost the 3-point line. And his run, I think on purpose, kind of an inverted pick and roll as the ball handler with Sam Merrill screening for him. He's so much more confident 1 and 2 dribbles to the rim, finishing with either hand. It doesn't always look great, although it looks pretty good. He's made he's more confident in his little 15-foot jump shot. Like, we got nothing else, I'll just shoot this. He's been fantastic for them. Again, this is another team that just needs to get whole. And Donovan Mitchell had the knee thing and the PRP and the broken nose. Like, they need him back, obviously. You mentioned it, man. When they're healthy and they got Strus flying around, they got LeVert as a 6-man. They got Okoro as kind of like, all right, we need your defense. And we got one of the bigs on the bench so we can absorb he's been shooting it well, but defenses don't treat him as a shooter. They got a lot of tools in their toolbox. Like, if they're healthy, I'm picking them to win any of those series I mentioned, Miami notwithstanding. We'll see if that's definitely Indiana, definitely Orlando. Knicks, I don't think they want to see the Knicks. The Knicks
No.
are like Freddy Krueger for them.
They bring out the worst in them, no matter what Cleveland does. The New York Knicks games look exactly the same.
But the Knicks are just gutting it out really, really well. And I mentioned the minutes low. Donte DiVincenzo had 40 points last night. He made 11 threes. Incredible season for him. It just feels like they're a placeholder team waiting to get healthy, but I don't even know what assumptions to make about, like, Anunoby came back, played 3 games. He's been out again. Randall has been out for a couple months now. I just don't know how far they can go as they are currently constructed. Robinson coming back helps, but like Hartenstein has been awesome for them. They don't really need like a giant upgrade at starting center. And even Achua as backup 5, or Achua and Sims together, has been fine. I don't know what to think of the Knicks other than kudos to Josh Hart for getting every rebound and getting triple doubles, and these Iron Man guys just gutting it out. Do you have any thoughts on the Knicks?
I think it's been fun. I'm glad you mentioned Hardenstein. His defense has been I feel like I owe him an apology because I didn't know he could play defense at this level consistently. I think Jalen Brunson obviously has been really good, but the way they're trying to use him at different times has been fun to watch. Like
In what sense?
trying to get him in more movement, coming off more staggers, trying to use his pick and roll if they start with an empty side to start their movement, just to try and add to what they're doing right now during the stretch to survive. I think that's been fun to watch. Depth becomes overrated to a degree in the playoffs, but I feel like Tibbs has more of his guys on this team that he trusts. Like Miles McBride going from the minutes that he played to now you get to play like 45, 46 minutes. That could be fun. I think it's just, can OG get healthy is the big one for me. Randall, I haven't thought about Randall in a minute, and he was incredible to me when he was playing. But OG raising the defensive ceiling for that team, I think they become very annoying if they can get him back.
The Orlando Magic are 18-6 in their last 24 games. That's not a misprint or error. 18-6. 21st in offense. They will likely continue their now 12-year streak of ranking 20th or worse in offensive efficiency for the season. Just an incredible achievement by the Magic. Third in defense. Third. And I love Banchero. He seems to get better every single game. I just don't. It's hard to win. As great as their defense is, they're not quite a one-way team, but their ceiling, it's hard to win when your offense sort of artificially shrinks your ceiling the way that it does for Orlando. But I'll tell you this, like, that defense is real. They're going to shrink your ceiling and make you play at their scoring level, their comfort zone, because their defense is like 100% legit. I don't know that they got enough pop to beat any of these teams in a playoff series. And by the way, that's fine. Like, this is all gravy for them. They are 42-29. Like, this is a strong winning season for them.
I think that's fair, but I think their identity, their belief, it makes them a little bit of a throwback to a degree to where we believe in what we do on offense and defense. I think the growth of Paolo has been the big key for me as far as not just the scoring, not just the pull-ups, but the drives, being able to read the defense and make those kind of plays, whether it's in the post, whether it's when he's used as a screener or a ball handler. I've liked that when teams go under, he's willing to take the pull-up three. And so now you have a little bit more usage and a little bit more comfort where you can put Paolo in different spots. Defenses are sending more attention and help and doubles. That's opening things up. Franz is making plays. Suggs is hitting threes and driving lanes. They just know who they are. And I've kind of liked that progression for them, where earlier in the season it felt like we're stuck offensively. We're in a box offensively. And now you're seeing where, okay, we may not have all the pace, we may not have all the shooting or all the spacing, but we're going to create different avenues. We're going to cut on the weak side. We're going to empty out a wing or a corner. We're going to find different gaps to make it tough on you. We're going to feel comfortable playing late in the clock, and then you got to deal with us on the other end. Their bench
Also, like, if you look at, I mentioned Isaac's net rating before, plus 14 per 100 possessions with Isaac on the floor. Their net rating is not good. It's dead even when he plays with Franz Wagner and Banchero, which translates to what you see, which is their bench changes games. They bring in Cole Anthony, Isaac, and Mo Wagner, and they are running opposing benches off the floor. That probably shrinks for them the benefit they get from that in the playoffs when rotations get a little shorter and all that. But those dudes are good. And to your point about the buy-in, like, they're just hard to score against. Suggs is incredible. And Banchero and Franz Wagner, for young, Banchero is an all-star. Wagner, I think, will get there. They're all the way bought in on defense. Like, they're not skimping on that end of the floor at all. They're maybe not as it's not their priority necessarily on this roster compared to some other guys, but they're making it their priority, and they certainly have the size and the smarts and the feet for it. Like, this team is not easy to score against, and they're going to make every game a war.
I can't wait for the 4-5 series. We're guaranteed to get defense, and sign me up for it. Give me an old school basketball playoff series.
Magic Cavs, if that's what it ended up being, got to be the leading candidate for the NBA TV first round series invitational. Like what other Indiana Cavs at 3-6 could get you there. That could be none of the West series are going to be NBA TV. Anyway, Steve Jones Jr., any parting thoughts?
The Denver Nuggets are coming.
Oh, I mean, that's just they've been my pick to make the finals all year. I guess we should mention, I haven't watched the game yet. I'm going to watch it later today. I was watching other games last night. My finals pick all year was Boston over Denver. I don't waver. Like I saw the 2 Boston-Denver games. Denver walked them down and did Denver stuff and won both games, and they've got the best guy. We know they've got the best guy. Wouldn't surprise me if Denver obviously won the championship. Did you see the Boston Hawks game last night?
I saw the ending of it, like the fourth quarter.
Why can't the Celtics ever just lose a normal game? Like, why does every loss have to be Armageddon? And like, is this team have what it made of? They blew another lead. They stopped. It's always they stopped playing and just started jacking up off the dribble threes. I got to dig in to what happened in this game for them to blow a 30-point lead. What happened? Why is every loss like so concern? It just feels so concerning.
Probably because we've seen Boston do all sorts of great things, but we've seen this same issue for years and years. And so people just have memories of Boston struggling late in games. Copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste.
What did you make a finals pick before the season? Or if you had to make one now, it sounds like Denver versus somebody.
Denver, Boston for me. Still my pick.
So you're not worried by Boston. You know, they almost lost to Milwaukee last week without Giannis, and every loss feels like a crisis. You're not worried about this.
No, March is weird. You know that better than anyone else. I mean, you can look it up. Remember the time LeBron made history against Golden State? You know who they lost to in March? The Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going great for the Brooklyn Nets this year either. Flash forward to 8 years, 27-45. Not a fun watch. Did beat the Raptors last night, 96-88. Didn't catch any of that one, Steve. Don't think I'm going to be rewatching any of that game. I'll tell you though, on Boston, I'm going to dig into the second half now, and I'm putting a pin in that Milwaukee game because I think the Knicks, if fully healthy, could give Boston a deep series. I don't know that they have I would pick them to win that series. I'd pick Boston. I think they could make it a 6 or like get a little lucky 7-game series. I don't know that we're going to see the Knicks fully healthy. I haven't liked much about how the Bucks have played this year, but I keep saying they have these 2 dudes. They get Middleton back. This is a scary team that can give Boston a real run. I'm putting a pin in that Bucks Thunder game, and I want to see how the Bucks come out of that and see if they catch a rhythm. Steve Jones Jr., dunker spot. Old Man and the Three Things with JJ Redick. And follow him on Twitter. Steve Jones 20, 2.0, basically
Yep.
Steve Jones 20. If you want to know what's going on in the basketball games, this is an account to follow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to make a hard left turn out of basketball into something that I guess is basketball adjacent. The sports gambling reckoning, in which we are all participants in some way, shape, or form, directly, indirectly, unwillingly, whatever, is here in sports. Obviously, baseball and Shohei Ohtani has been the headliner, or his interpreter anyway. I'm just going to leave that over here. The NBA had a bombshell yesterday, and one of the guys who helped report it, David Purdum, our sports gambling expert at ESPN, is here to help us understand what in the heck is happening with Jontay Porter and some interesting / suspicious bets on his unders in at least 2 games. David Purdum, how are you?
I'm doing great, Jack, and you nailed it. Jontay Porter has been inactive for several games, including this most recently. The NBA has said that they are investigating some irregular betting that involved his prop bets, and prop bets are the over-under on how the amount of points he scores or the number of rebounds he gets. And what happened is in 2 games, one in January against the Clippers, sportsbooks started to notice an uptick, an increase in interest in betting on Jontay Porter props. This is a low-profile name. Not many people outside of the NBA knew him, and so all of a sudden, there's a lot more betting interest, and that raised flags for them. Well, in that first game against the Clippers, he happens to go out after playing just 4 or 5 minutes, citing a kind of a lingering eye injury that he had suffered before. Before the game, there had been all those bets on his unders, under on his points, under on his number of three-pointers made, and things like that. And so books were like, that was suspicious. Well, then just last week against the Kings on Thursday, same thing happened. All of a sudden, all these accounts start trying to bet on the unders, on Porter props, on his over-under, on his rebounds, and so forth. And lo and behold, he goes out again within 4, 5, 6 minutes of playing time. This time, is sick. He says he's sick. So the bookmakers at that point, they're like, this seems really suspicious, and it flagged it all the way up to the league.
So I am a gambling idiot. I don't do any gambling. I don't really know anything about gambling. I had a buddy in college who was deep into it, and that was enough for me to this poor guy is watching like the 2 a.m. whack game in our dorm room lounge with just intense fever pitch interest and often disappointment. That was enough to dissuade me from ever really getting into it. But I was in just doing a brief bit of research for this. I had remembered, obviously, Adam Silver's op-ed, which called for the legalization of sports gambling as a landmark event. That was 10 years ago. That's how long that was. And that was a bombshell when that came out. A commissioner of a sports league, really the first one in the U.S. to do it, saying, I think we need to get gambling out of the cover of darkness. Let's make it legal. Obviously, there's a potentially huge, it's not huge yet, I don't think, but a huge financial potential to gain here from the NBA's partnership with FanDuel and DraftKings and all this and casinos and everything. And then I read a piece that you wrote on the 5-year anniversary of that op-ed after the Supreme Court essentially ushered in legalized sports gambling. And you talked to Mark Cuban and Ted Leonsis, some other big NBA heavy hitters, and the consensus was like that op-ed from Adam Silver 10 years ago now was indeed like kind of a landmark turning of the tide event in all of this. And it's been a mad rush really in the last 3 or 4 years. And it just feels like a tidal wave is coming. I mean, in the last week alone, Ohtani is one thing. That's probably been your life for the past week, correct? This whole NBA thing is a minor side plot in your life.
I wouldn't say it's a minor subplot, but it certainly disrupted my focus, which was on Ohtani situation. And you're right. We've had 38 states launch illegal sports betting markets since the Supreme Court decision. Before that, primarily Nevada. So you had to go to Las Vegas, or you had to deal with an offshore sports book or one of your local bookmakers on campus or at a bowling alley or at the country club. So things have changed dramatically.
And just in the last week before this in the NBA, you had Tyrese Halliburton come out and say, I feel like myself a prop for all these fans just yelling at me about, oh, the over didn't come in, the under came in, you cost me money. And then I thought a disturbing story that kind of got brushed aside because the figure involved in it is not super famous. And it was just sort of not vague, but it for some reason didn't get any pickup. JB Bickerstaff, the coach of the Cavs, came out and said, I've had gamblers get my phone number, and I don't know if he used the word threaten, but clearly the conversations that they've had or the text he received about his family, his job, his career, were not friendly. I thought that was a pretty explosive story. And now here we are. So let me ask you the dumbest question. When DraftKings and according to your reporting, at least one other sportsbook have flagged these bets on Jontay Porter unders as suspicious. I think according to your reporting, some of these bets are in the 10K, 20K range, which is high. Is that unusual for any level of player prop bet, like superstar prop bets, or just role player prop bets?
No, absolutely. Betting limits on NBA player props, they kind of vary by sportsbook, right? And by the customer. If you're a VIP customer, maybe you can get, 5,000 or whatever. But typically, if you just log on and want to bet, maybe you get up to 1,000, maybe you get $500 on it, maybe as much as 2,000, let's say. But to get much more down, you've got to be a VIP client with special privileges. And what stood out to those bookmakers was on that January game against these Clippers, all of a sudden you get this rush of bets from these accounts, and they're wanting to bet upwards of $10,000 and $20,000 on, again, a low profile name. And that was just, it was so blatantly obvious. They're going, what is going on here? So yes, you just don't get that size of bets on these player props normally. And what also triggers people, what people will do when they see this, they say, well, I can only get $1,000 if I bet just on the under on his points. Well, what if I parlay that with the under on his points, under on his rebounds, under on his made 3-pointers? All of a sudden, my $1,000 bet is now paying 10-1 odds or whatever it is. And so you're able to escalate those payments. And a lot of people mentioned that today, that some of these bets were on same game parlays, which have become really, really popular in the NBA specifically.
What does it mean for a sports book to flag these bets as suspicious? And I mean that in the most literal sense. Like, what happens now? I assume those have been paid out. Whoever bet on them made their money. That money is now theirs. But like, what? Well, maybe not. So what sequence of events takes place now?
Well, yeah, first of all, not necessarily will they pay them out. They will flag them and they will hold it, and say, this was something that we need to investigate further. Was there inside information involved here? What's going on here? So they don't automatically pay it. And some of these bets, I'm told, have not been paid out. But the first thing they would do, they would discuss it, and then they would reach out to these integrity providers. There's a company called US Integrity. It's a Las Vegas firm. And that company acts as kind of a hub, right? Sportsbooks call, hey, we saw something weird here. So US Integrity sends out an alert to all sportsbooks. Hey, we're hearing reports of some irregular activity on this Raptors game or on whichever game it is. Once that happens, then it goes to the leagues. The leagues are partners with the NBA is partners with these groups. There's US Integrity, there's Genius Sports, Sport Radar, there's a whole industry around this. And those companies, they will kind of launch the investigation. They don't necessarily dig into it all, get real thorough into the data and things. They leave that up to the leagues, and sometimes it gets up to the FBI and so forth. So that's how it all kind of starts. Sportsbooks see it first. They contact one of these integrity monitors, which is the hub. The integrity monitors reach out to the league, they reach out to the teams, they reach out to gambling regulators and other sports books.
What is, without necessarily reading any intent into the case of Jontay Porter, and by the way, I've reached out to the players union, I've reached out to certain people in the league office, I've reached out to Jontay Porter's agency. Crickets so far, really. I mean, I've had a couple people just like talk to me and say things like, we're waiting for more facts to come in before we issue anything on this. Even DraftKings, I think, released a statement to you saying we're not going to comment any further on this. So like, I've tried and learned some things here and there about the general landscape, but nothing really specific about this case. Nobody seems ready to really come out and say, I think the investigation is going to be thorough, might take a little while, but like what? Again, I'm intentionally asking a dumb question. I have my own theories, but this is not my area of expertise. It's yours. What are the most logical explanations for what happened here? And what are the worst? So I think certainly there will be people on Jontay Porter's universe who will just I think, argue this is all a coincidence. Nothing untoward happened here. And maybe that ends up being the case. I literally have no idea. I don't know what they'll say. What possible explanations do you have your ears open for, or in your expertise, are you just sort of thinking, when I'm digging into it, I'm starting here is the most logical and then going from there?
Well, the most plausible explanation here is some sort of leak of information, where a player may say, hey, I'm not going to play. I'm going to take myself out of the game for whatever reason, 5 to 10 minutes. You guys should be betting on the under on my stats. And that's a general example, but that's one of the plausible scenarios that could happen. It seems very unlikely to me that a player would go to the trouble to actually place the bets themselves. Place the bet, I'm going to score less than 5 points, go to a sportsbook and do that. That certainly would trigger. There are some technology that shows, okay, this player is in the NBA, this player or this coach is this. So they would be detected. Plus geolocation, where the bets were placed. are easy to find. So if he was to do it, if somebody was to do it in a locker room, it happened to a lot of the NFL players recently. You may have heard of over the summer. Players were placing bets, not even on the NFL, but they were doing it from a league facility, which is legal. So the most plausible explanation to me is some sort of sharing of inside information. Happens when you'll see it in the betting market. Bettors almost always know first. A couple years ago, Jalen Hurts was getting ready to play the Cowboys. Philadelphia quarterback getting to play the Cowboys. Early in the week, the line started moving towards Dallas significantly. A couple of hours later, all of a sudden we get a report that Hurts is injured. He's got a shoulder injury. So this kind of information almost always hits the betting market first before it comes out to the public. So that's kind of my plausible explanation that there was some sort of leak.
Which may, I mean, yeah, I don't want to speculate on where the leaks would come from and this. What's the best case scenario for the NBA and for Jontay Porter and for the Raptors? What's the most, I hate to use this word, what's the most innocent explanation for any of this?
Okay. You saw Jontay get poked in the eye in the Grizzlies game, which was 3 games before that Clippers game, right? You saw him get poked in the eye, and you wondered, well, I wonder how that's going to linger. We see he's going to play, but maybe we don't think he's going to be at full strength. So we're just betting unders, doing it because we think, the injury is going to cause him. Okay. Nothing really wrong with that, right? You're trying to take advantage of some information, handicap that information, and place those bets. Same thing with this game last week. I don't know if it was reported before the game that he was under the weather. If it were to have come out and bettors caught wind of that, and they said, "Hey, I don't know if he's going to, play this whole game." Then again, I'm going to bet the unders because he's going to play less minutes. The props are based on a full game and how many average minutes he plays. So I think that would be a reasonable explanation and pretty innocent too, that bettors were just kind of outsmarted the sports books. They took advantage of the information and handicapped it in a different way and beat the odds.
Again, not my world. I don't think I've ever even logged in to DraftKings or FanDuel. By the way, and that's not saying like, oh, I'm Mr. Innocent Guy. We have segments on every show on ESPN about gambling now, including NBA Today. There's ads on this podcast that I have read for FanDuel. We're all complicit in all of this. It's all of our world now. This is just what it is. I just don't do it, and I don't really look at it. So if I go to I watched Cavs Hornets last night. Okay. Craig Porter Jr. plays for the Cavs. I'm just using him as a completely random example. I was thinking, who's a guy who sometimes doesn't play and sometimes does play? And it's hard to know the games maybe they're going to need him and maybe they're going to not. Are there prop bets on literally every guy on every roster, even guys who might not play?
Yeah. At the biggest sports books, you will find props on every player that's active, even guys that are iffy. They may be listed first, and if they're ruled out, they will take them off the board, and all those bets will be canceled. They put in rules. A player must play a certain amount of time, just a couple minutes, I believe. I guess the biggest example that we've had of this in recent years was Draymond Green a couple years ago. You probably remember when he wanted to play for Klay Thompson's return of injury, and he just went out there for the tip, right? Well, the Golden State's PR team tweeted out, Draymond will play, just go out to tip to honor Klay's return, and then be removed from the game. Well, bettors pounced on that, right? They bet on every little under that you could bet on Draymond Green over and over and over. And sportsbooks got hit really, really hard on that. And they were just unable to react to the information quickly enough to halt that action. So those things happen. And yes, you can find over-unders on almost every player. Indeed, we had them on Jontay Porter. So
what could that change in response to something like this, depending on how this turns out? Would prop bets on just sort of, guys who might play 2 minutes, 0 minutes, 6 minutes, could those go away or be limited as a result of it? I mean, who makes these rules? I don't know. Yeah,
certainly the sportsbooks could choose to not offer as many players and odds and prop bets on as many players. In college, we have seen this. States have come out and said, look, we don't think we should be betting on individual collegiate players, NCAA tournament guys that are playing over under on those. Ohio, Maryland have banned those. Can't do that there. So there's been kind of an increase in that. Will it happen at the professional level? pushback from sportsbook would be like, well, if we don't offer it, then the local bookmaker is going to offer it. And wouldn't you guys rather us offer it so we can see if there's something kind of irregular going on, and then we can point it out? Whereas if a scenario like the Porter situation had occurred at the local bookmaker, you're never going to hear about it. And that's what the sports book industry will always kind of fall back onto. Look, this is going to happen. People are going to bet on this, whether they do it through a DraftKings or they do it through a Caesars or wherever, or they have to go down to Uncle Bob at the bowling alley and place their bet. And Uncle Bob's not going to sit there and call, hey, something, call the NBA, hey, something was kind of weird about this game.
NBA players, personnel are allowed to wager on sports that are not the NBA in states where it is legal, correct?
Correct.
I don't know, David. Again, this is not my world.
Mm-hmm.
There's been tennis scandals in the past. There's been soccer scandals in the past. I don't like the word scandal. I don't know if that's the right word, but this stuff just kind of scares me a little bit. And, you mentioned the word integrity before about integrity bureaus. There are a lot of people on Twitter last night talking about, the integrity of the game is all that matters here. And I don't want to be the pearl clutching, 46-year-old old man guy who doesn't gamble. But that seemed, I don't know what happened here. I don't know where this is going. Obviously, I grew up as a child of the 80s. Pete Rose was like a landmark event in my life. He bet, I believe he bet on his own team, correct? So he bet on himself, I guess, the Reds, and was banned from baseball as a result. I don't know, like, where is this going? Because if the game, the NBA lived this, they don't want to hear this word ever mentioned again. They flirted with this territory with Tim Donaghy. Yes. Like, if you don't have a game, and we're not here yet, but if there's any crack in trust of like the game itself, you don't have a sport really. Like, so like, we're not there. We're not close to there. That's a different universe away. But what's your just general take on that whole landscape?
I always look back at that Donaghy situation. He just doesn't get much worse than when you have an official betting on games that he's refereeing, right? That's about as bad as it gets. And Donaghy never came out, admitted, and was never charged with actually fixing a game. There are plenty of evidence and signs to the contrary, but he was never convicted or admitted that. The NBA came back from that, right? Franchises all-time high value right now. They survived that. Would they be able to survive another betting scandal? Probably. I think they would. I think it would tarnish the image a little bit, and some fans would be turned off, but they would come back because, again, while it would happen, I don't think it would be widespread. And in this case right here, if it turns out that something was nefarious here and they were manipulating the game, people are going to be uproared about it. But are they going to not watch the playoffs? I doubt it. I don't think it's going to hurt television ratings. I hear you with we don't want to be extremists. And Bob Bogaris, right? He worked for the Mavericks, former longtime professional bettor, made a lot of money betting on NBA first halves back in his day before he joined the Mavericks. He has been on Twitter recently expressing extreme concern about what is going on and how the betting market is taking shape. All these different ways you can bet on all these different player props during the game. Before the game, it used to be when I like to bet, I'm a very small bettor. I'm a terrible bettor. But when I bet, it's like $20 and it's Heat -3. I sit back and I watch the game and I enjoy it. I root it on, right? That's not how these younger generation work. I'm a dinosaur to these guys. These guys are betting throughout the game constantly. Next possession, who's going to hit the next three-pointer? Who's going to be in the lead after the first quarter? Everything. And there's a little bit of concern that kind of stuff can spin out of control quickly. So your concerns are valid. Do I think a gambling scandal would completely destroy the league and they would lose interest of all from everybody?
I didn't even mean to imply that. Yeah, again, this is it's just not my world. And one of the guardrails here against what you're saying is, like, Adam Silver has unilateral power to, like, if if someone within the league is found to have broken the gambling rules, like they can just be kicked out of the league. And like that alone is a pretty goddamn powerful deterrent for people who don't necessarily, whether it's players, whoever, like anyone in the league. This is not necessarily a long-term, like 40-year career for you in this industry in the best of circumstances. I assume that is the ultimate hammer here to sort of like, if the league is going to stand up and say there's nothing wrong here, everything's fine, like that's going to be one of the reasons.
Yeah, 100%. And the deterrent is really the only weapon they have to try to combat these issues, because as easy as it is to hand somebody your phone, hey, place this bet for me, or do this, it's very, very difficult to stop, right? You can't prevent it. You can only try to deter it. And if there is something nefarious that comes out of this and Commissioner Silver says you're done, you're not playing in the league anymore, maybe that will kind of get players' attention, because it seems like in the NFL, we've had over a dozen guys violate the sports betting policy for there. They've gotten suspended 1 or 2 years. Now we'll have to see how Commissioner Silver reacts to this once we see all the facts come out.
What have I missed in asking you questions about this? What's the subject area that I haven't hit? What's a side plot that you think is important that I just, because I'm so far out of my depth here, I just haven't hit? What else should we be talking about?
I think you touched about the Bickerstaff stuff and the threats and the people are hearing, and that's a big concern for me. I wrote about it last year during March Madness, and there were some threats made towards collegiate athletes, and it happens. And that is a big, big concern for me. And in every podcast you hear about guys talking about, gosh, all my DMs they're full of guys congratulating me or thanking me for winning their bet, or completely ripping me for not winning their bet. So I think that is going to be a major concern and something we want to pay attention to and continue to put a spotlight on it. As you mentioned, Coach Bickerstaff, I reached out to the Cavs for that, did not get any kind of response. I did talk to the NBA briefly. They were working on getting me something for this week, and then this Jontay Porter stuff happens. So they're aware of it. I hope they take full attention of it, because I just don't think that it's really disheartening for me to hear that gamblers are threatening athletes and coaches. I'm really disappointed to hear that.
David Purdum, this certainly was not my plan. I'm just a hoops guy. This is not my world, but I'm not so dumb and naive as to not understand what's happening in the broader sports universe and all of these stories and the potential ripple effects of them. I'm sure we will talk at some point soon, but listen, you've been everywhere. You got a lot to do. Thank you for lending us any of your time. David Purdum, ESPN gambling, sports gambling expert, self-proclaimed bad gambler, which I like. Thank you for your time. And sincerely, like, I'm so far out of my depth. I need people like you to guide me through this. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Zach. Hit me up anytime if you got questions.